Continuing Bhagavad Gita, chapter 13. Arjuna said, O Keshava, I fain would learn from you of the Prakriti and Purusha too, the Kshetra, Kshetragya, the object known, and of knowledge gathered by perception. The illustrious one said, This body is the field of perception, called by the name of Kshetra, Kunti's son, and who this field of perception surveys is as the Kshetragya, known by the wise. And in all the Kshetras, I am the one who perceives all of them, O Bharat's son. Knowledge of Kshetra and Kshetragya known is proper knowledge in my opinion. Now, what is that field? Whence its origin, its constitution and transformation? Who is that knower? What his potency? And in concise terms, now hear of that from me. The ancient rishis have sung in their lays, in many meters and in many ways, and lines of the Brahma Sutra proclaim, and what is cause and effect ascertain. The gross elements and the ego sense, intellect, the unmanifest essence, the senses and the organs 10 and 1, and the 5 objects of perception. Desire, hatred, happiness, distress, the sum of all and conscious steadfastness. Herein the field's constituents are known, its faculties and transformations shown. Pridelessness, modesty, non-violence, innocent simplicity, tolerance, service to the preceptor, cleanliness, restraint of the self and firm steadiness, renunciation of objects of sense, to be devoid of haughty arrogance, to always apprehend the miseries of birth and death, of old age and disease, without fond attachment for company of son or wife, the home or family, always equanimous in loss or gain of cherished objects, to always maintain unwavering yoga of devotion in some secluded place and all alone, to have no aspiration nor to long to dwell where multitudes of people throng. In knowledge of the self, firm constancy, to learn of wisdom and philosophy. All this as true knowledge has been declared, all else is ignorance with this compared. The object to be known I shall relate, whereby one attains the immortal state. Brahman, beginningless, my pure essence, beyond existence and non-existence. Everywhere are his hands and feet divine, everywhere his heads and his faces shine, with ears everywhere he incorporates, and everywhere covers and permeates. Without organs of sense he doth perceive, from him the senses perception receive. Though unattached all the world he sustains, he enjoys, though attributeless remains. Within and without beings he exists, thus the mobile and immobile subsists. His subtlety is hard to understand. He is both far away and near at hand. Although he seems in beings to divide, he always undivided doth abide. Who is the stay of beings by his power, who know also he doth create and devour. Of bright stars, the luminary divine, 'tis said he beyond all darkness doth shine. Knowledge, the knower, the perceivable, he reposes within the hearts of all. Thus, knowledge and the field of perception, the object known, have been dwelt upon. My devotee, with full knowledge of this, attains to my state of eternal bliss. Now, both, it should be known, nevertheless, nature and the soul are beginningless. The evolutes of gunas are induced by nature, whereby effects are produced. Indeed, nature, the source, is said to be of all cause and effect and agency, whereas 'tis said the soul itself contrives the cause whereby it joy or woe derives. The living soul, thus in nature confined, enjoyment of nature's attributes bind. Attachment to the attributes alone is cause of birth from good or evil womb. The overseer and the permitter, the Lord, enjoyer, and mighty ruler, superior, within the body dwells, the soul supreme, 'tis said, who all excels. Whoever thus knows nature and the soul, and the attributes, comprehends the whole. Let him in whate'er condition remain, he never shall take his birth here again. The self within the self some visualize, and see the self with meditation's eyes. And others by yoga attain to this, of action and also analysis. Nay, even the ignorant who are stirred to worship me by what they have but heard. Thereby the state of death they go beyond, who hearing of these things are ever fond. Whatever does exist or come to be, the moving and non-moving entity, O Bharat's prince, when nature is combined, kshetra and kshetragya in union bind. Who sees the same soul in all forms abide, and within the supreme ruler reside, immortal souls in decaying bodies confined, and whoso sees thus truly sees, who sees the same self everywhere exist, and all in the supreme ruler subsist. He does not the self by the self debase, but unto the supreme doth onward pace. Who understands all acts and agency are wrought with nature in conformity, and who sees that the self does nothing do, perceives correctly with perception true. As when he sees the separated soul within the undivided supreme whole, how from the one does all this emanate, he then attains Brahman, the supreme state, without beginning and immutable, superior and imperishable. The self, O Kunti's son, though he remain embodied, does not act, is free from stain. Just as the sky does all things permeate, but rarefied retains its pristine state, likewise does he in the body remain, uncontaminated and free from stain. E'en as the sun illumination spreads, and over all this world his light he sheds, on likewise by the self, O Bharat's son, is lighted up the field of perception. And those who can dispart with wisdom's eye the knower and the field of activity, the soul's release from bondage comprehends, and unto the supreme goal onward wends. Thus ends chapter 13 in Bhagavad Gita, now chapter 14. The illustrious one said, "Hearken again to my supernal speech, wherein the best of all knowledge I teach. The wise sages, this knowledge having gained, have the supremest perfection attained. And whoso in this knowledge refuge gain, perfect similitude with me attain. They are not born with creation's process, nor in destruction undergo distress. Great Brahman, as the womb I designate, which by my potency I impregnate, whence creation of beings was begun, then brought into existence Bharat's son. From whatever wombs beings are thus born, in varied forms and species, Kunti's son, all these from mighty Brahman's womb proceed, and I the father am who plants the seed. Sattva, Raja, Tama are attributes of nature which have varied evolutes, which, though immortal, mighty armed, doth bind the soul within the body fast confined. Of these, Sattva does always pure remain, full of illumination, void of stain, which binds to knowledge and to happiness the soul embodied, you who are sinless. Know, Raja, to be passion and desire, craving and for company to aspire. It binds the soul, O Kunti's noble son, to perform desire-prompted action. But Tama, know, is born of ignorance, inadvertence, folly, and indolence. It binds all bodied souls in delusion and slothfulness, O Bharat's noble son. From Sattva, Bharat, happiness proceeds. From Raja, zeal in practicing good deeds. But Tama, the soul's pristine knowledge veils, and with folly and indolence assails. When Raja and Tama are in descent, then, O Bharat, Sattva is prominent. When Raja and Sattva, Tama assails, Tama over the other two prevails. When all the portals of the body shine, illuminated with wisdom divine, when knowledge develops by increment, then it is said Sattva is ascendant. Greed and endeavour, and to undertake diverse activities for passion's sake, these rise when Raja gains preeminence, with vast increase, O Bharat's noble prince. Dark ignorance and slothful indolence, delusion, folly, and inadvertence, all these arise by Tama's influence, with vast increase, O Kuru's noble prince. If, when Sattva predominates, he dies, the bodied soul ascends up to the skies, and does the region of the blessed attain, where dwell the sage and wise, free from all stain. And if he dies when Raja dominates, mid those attached to deeds he incarnates, but Tama to darkest ignorance dooms, to birth in brutish and ignoble wombs. The fruit of pious work is said to be of Sattva from all taint and blemish free. Raja the fruit bears of sorrow and pain, and Tama bears of ignorance the stain. Sattva's development pure knowledge brings, and greed and avarice from Raja springs. From Tama folly and inadvertence, and verily the gloom of ignorance. The Sattva state doth raise and elevate, the Raja remains in the middle state, but those in the vile attribute must go of Tama to the dark regions below. And when a wise seer doth truly see, aside from attributes, no agency, he then perceives whom attributes transcends, and unto my divine state onward wends. Transcending these three attributes that form the embodied in bodies that conform, he is freed from birth, death, old age, and pain, and doth to immortality attain. Arjuna said, by what signs, O mighty Lord, may I know one who beyond the attributes doth go? How does he conduct himself? How does he transcend these attributes of gunas three? The illustrious one said, when light or action gain the ascendant, or when prevails utter bewilderment, who is not fraught with hatred or desire when these rise to prominence or retire, as one indifferent and unconcerned, who has these functions of gunas discerned, remains unmoved though attributes impel, and unwavering doth securely dwell, self-possessed, and in joy and woe the same in gain and loss, in praise and blame, sees mud and stone and gold with equal view, in what is pleasing and displeasing too, who regards equally both fame and blame, and views friend and enemy as the same, who all his fond undertakings forgoes, 'tis said beyond the attributes he goes. And whoso worships me unswervingly, with yoga of devotion constantly, the attributes of gunas he transcends, and to the Brahman supreme he ascends. Indeed, I am the stay and resting place of the supreme Brahman and deathless grace, eternal virtue and true righteousness, and supreme eviternal happiness. Thus ends chapter 14 in Bhagavad Gita. Now, chapter 15. The illustrious one said, with roots above and branches down below, the deathless banyan tree, 'tis said, doth grow. Its leaves are hymns of poetry ornate, who knows it is in knowledge consummate. Its branches nourished by the attributes, above below sense objects are its shoots. Its pendulous and tangled roots fast bind to actions in this world of humankind. Its true form in this world remains unseen, with no beginning, no ending, nor mean. With acts of non-attachment, dexterously uproot and fell this mighty banyan tree. Thereupon the path to the supreme wend, whence gaining none ever again descend, and say, I seek the ancient primal one, from whom the stream perennial begun. From haughty pride and from delusion free, without the fault of evil company, who knowledge of the self always pursues, who all his worldly ambitions eschews, who all duality doth thus transgress, is free from vain happiness and distress, who always undeluded thus remains, those regions imperishable attains. Nor sun nor moon there shed their radiant light, nor is there burning fire shining bright. That is my own supreme transcendent sphere, which having gained, none ever returns here. Indeed, a part of my own self exists, immortal soul, who in the world subsists, who through the mind, the sixth organ, contacts nature, which thus deludes him and attracts. And when the master of the body takes a new form and the old body forsakes, these faculties of sense with him stay, as the breeze from the flowers scents convey. The ears, the eyes, the tactile sense as well, the tongue and the sense that apprehends smell, along with mind, he over these presides, which the pleasure of sense objects provides. Thus he remains, departs and goes his way, enjoys pleasures under the guna's sway. Yet this the foolish cannot e'er descry, but only those who see with wisdom's eye. The yogin, who devout practice maintains, perception of the self within attains. But those who practice inconstantly, though striving, unaware they do not see. The splendor of the sun, Aditya, spreads, and his light over the universe sheds, and radiance of fire and moonshine derive from supreme splendor that is mine. Within the earth I enter and sustain, and all beings by my energy maintain. I nourish all herbs and simples that grow with fertile beams that from the bright moon flow. In bodies of creatures I am installed, as gastric fire, Vaishvanara called. With inward and the outward breath compressed, I do the fourfold types of food digest. Indeed, within every heart I repose. From me memory wisdom comes and goes. In all the Vedic texts it has been shown that it is myself that am to be known. The knowledge of the Vedic texts I wit, for I am he who the Vedanta writ. Two types of beings are discernible, the everlasting and perishable. All creatures perish by their fate's decree, but one is everlasting said to be. Yet distinct, higher, and everlasting, there is the Almighty Supreme Being, who enters the three worlds and rules the whole, as the Supreme Imperishable Soul. Since I excel all perishable things, and even imperishable beings, I am thus in the world and Vedas famed, and as Supreme Purushottama named. And whoso knows, by folly unbeguiled, myself as the Purushottama styled, he knowing all, thus worships me always with all his heart, Bharat, adores and prays. Thus Holy Scripture's secret mystery to you, sinless one, has been told by me. The wise, by intellection, Bharat's son, achieves perfection, and his task is done. Thus ends chapter 15 in Bhagavad Gita. Now, chapter 16. The illustrious one said, Fearlessness and the state of sanctity. In wisdom and in yoga, constancy. Charity, sacrifice, and self-control, study, penance, simplicity of soul, non-violence, truthful, from anger free, renouncement, peace, who doth not vilify, pity for beings, uncovetousness, determination, modesty, meekness, vigour, forgiveness, and firm fortitude, unhateful, clean, a prideless attitude. These, Bharat, are the traits that I outline of one endued from birth with gifts divine. O'erweening pride, conceit, and arrogance, harsh cruelty, and gloomy ignorance, these are the traits, O Partha, that adorn one who has been with gifts demonic born. To liberation leads the wealth divine, the demonic to bondage doth consign. Fear not, Pandava, since you are possessed of wealth divine and naturally blessed. Two types of creatures here I thus define, the one demonic, the other divine. The divine traits I have already told, now hear as I the demonic unfold. Those who a demonic nature maintain know not when to indulge or abstain. Without good conduct, and always unclean, no truth nor honesty is in them seen. They say there is no truth, no basis firm, and that there is no ruling God affirm. They say there is no cause, but still profess what else is it but amorous congress? Thus in this view the ruined soul remains obstinately, for he has meagre brains. In abominable deeds they employ themselves, the world to ruin and destroy. Full of desire and lust insatiate, with pride and self-esteem intoxicate, confused by hopes for transitory things, avowed to vile wicked undertakings, perplexed by innumerable desires, they seek in vain till life itself expires, and with a firm conviction they attest, the joys and pleasures that I take are best. Bound by 100 fetters of desire, habituated to anger and ire, also their joys and pleasures to maintain accumulate by means unrighteous gain. This day by me so much has been attained, whereby all my ambitions shall be gained. All this is mine presently, I conceive, in the future I shall more wealth receive. This enemy I have dispatched today, the others I shall trample down and slay. I am a lord who rare delights enjoy. I perfect am, potent and full of joy. My treasuries with heaps of wealth abound. High-born and noble relatives surround. And who is there indeed like unto me? I sacrifice, rejoice, give charity. And thus deluded by folly they be. They with diverse anxieties are fraught, and in the network of delusion caught. Fondly attached by lust and pleasure's spell, they fall into the unclean depths of hell. Selfish and vain and full of arrogance, deluded by the pride of affluence, with ostentation and merely in name they sacrifice, but prescribed rules disdain. Possessed of self-conceit and insolence, brute force and anger and concupiscence, myself and all beings they castigate, so full of malice and so full of hate. Those envious and base, and who cause pain, in transmigration must ever remain, and I cast them forever and forlorn in evil wombs demonic to be born, and thus deluded again and again rebirth into demonic wombs obtain, and thus not reaching me, O Kunti's son, they fall into the lowest condition. There are 3 gates that lead to perdition, which to the self is cause of destruction: ardent desire, wrathful rage, and greed. Therefore these 3 you must avoid indeed. From these, O son of Kunti, he is free who thus avoids these gates of darkness 3, who acts in ways for the self's ultimate benefit, proceeds to the supreme state. But whoso scriptural ordinance scorns, and acts according to his whims performs, he does not perfection or aught attain of happiness, nor knows the supreme gain. Let Holy Scripture therefore be your guide, and what duty and not duty decide. Knowing from Scripture's mandate what is due, you should the righteous action thus pursue. Thus ends chapter 16. in Bhagavad Gita, now chapter 17. Arjuna said, O Krishna, who thus scripture's mandates scorns, but in good faith acts of worship performs, what is the determination of these? Of sattva, raja, tama qualities? The illustrious one said, bodied souls with natural faith are filled, of three varieties from birth instilled, of sattva, raja, tama, that in them you shall from me of that now hear. O Bharat, all according to their kind, unto their natures bent are thus inclined. To be endued with faith, all men are shown, and from his faith the man himself is known. Those of a sattvic mien the gods adore, the rajasic fiends and yakshas implore, but tamasic ones reverence the hosts of elemental spirits, fiends and ghosts, who in the harshest penances engage, which are not found in Holy Scripture's page, disposed to haughty pride and arrogance, urged on by passion and concupiscence, who torment themselves as others as well, and even me who doth inwardly dwell, they also torment. All these signs confess those who a demonic nature possess. Also the food, to each agreeable, again is of three types discernible, and sacrifice, penance, and charity are so distinguished. Hear of that from me. Those foodstuffs that longevity augment, healthy and wholesome, full of nutriment, the juicy, oleaginous, the sweet, these are the foods the sattvic like to eat. The bitter, sour, salty, astringent, the very hot, the dry, and the pungent, these are the foods that the rajasic choose, which distemper and misery produce. Food that is old, from which the taste has gone, the which is putrid, stinking, and rotten, and leavings of another's plate and fare, are the foods to the tamasic most dear, who sacrifice without desire for gain, as Vedic texts of holy writ ordain, seeking no recompense, to be resigned to duty is worship of sattvic kind. But sacrifice performed for recompense, with ostentatious show and insolence, O foremost of the Bharat dynasty, such sacrifice rajasic know to be. And sacrifice that scripture's rules disdain, that gifts of food, munchers, and fees disclaim, devoid of faith and due reverence shown, such sacrifice as tamasic is known. To worship gods, teachers, and the twice-born men, the learned and always simple and clean, non-violence, and vows of continence, all these are known as bodily penance. To speak the truth and beneficial word, not rancorous, but pleasant to be heard, deep study of what holy scriptures teach, is designated as penance of speech. A tranquil mind, gentle and quiescent, to be self-controlled and to be silent, and purity of thought and sanctity are as mental penances known to be. Those men with superior faith perform all these penances of tripartite form, without or fault or object, without or fruit or object to be gained, indeed is as the sattvic penance named. But those in pride who penance undertake, for honour and for adulation's sake, it is said such penance done here for gain is called rajasic and fleeting and vain. And those penances that are undergone in foolishness and in great exertion, to hurt the self and others to give pain, is called tamasic penance by name. generous donatives of gifts to make, for no return, purely for duty's sake, in place, at times, and to persons worthy, such donatives are sattvic said to be. But those who give in hopes for some return, urged by the wish for merit's fruit to earn, given reluctantly and grudgingly, such is known as rajasic charity. And those gifts made inconsiderately, in place at times, and to persons unworthy, with disrespect and with dishonour shown, such charity as tamasic is known. The three words Om, Tat, Sat denote in sooth Brahman, the supreme and absolute truth, which from the ancient time, 'tis said, gave rise to Brahmins, the Vedas, and sacrifice. Therefore, sacrifice, gifts, austerity, ordained by Holy Scripture's firm decree, are undertaken by reciting Om by Brahmin knowers, and thus well begun. Pronouncing Tat without desiring gain, who sacrifice, gifts, and penance maintain, they do not the fruit of actions desire, seeking but liberation to acquire. And Sat also, let it be understood, denotes excellence and all that is good. Thus when meritorious deeds are done, the word Sat is pronounced, O Prita's son. All acts of sacrifice and charity, and firm steadfastness in austerity, and all actions which to me they devote, the name of Sat doth verily denote. Oblations and gifts and penances done, in want of proper faith, O Prita's son, are called Asat, and base and unworthy, and naught in this or in the world to be. Thus ends chapter 17 in Bhagavad Gita. Now, chapter 18. Arjuna said, O mighty armed, from you I fain would learn twixt sannyasa and tyaga to discern. O Lord Supreme, who wicked Keshi slew, O Hrishikesh, what differ twixt the two? What differs twixt the two? The illustrious one said, acts prompted by desire to forego, the sagacious ones as sannyasa know. Relinquishment of fruits the actions bring is called tyaga by those understanding. Since actions are flawed, some sages opine that all activity one should resign. Some say that sacrifice, gifts, charity are worthy and should not abandoned be. Hear now of tyaga in all certainty from me, prince of the Bharat dynasty. Tyaga is also in three parts defined, which I declare, O tiger of mankind. Acts of sacrifice, gifts, and penance done as duty, one should not forsake or shun. For sacrifice, gifts, and austerities, even the learned sages purifies. But even in these actions resolute, without attachment for the action's fruit, one should engage, O Prita's noble son. This is my determinate opinion. But who abandons deeds that should be done, out of delusion or a false notion, such renunciation has been defined as false tyaga of the tamasic kind. Who from misery to tyaga resorts, or fears the loss of bodily comforts, such renunciation is indeed called rajasic, whence no fruit doth proceed. But, Arjuna, who pious deeds pursue, as holy writ and duty bids them do, who doth attachment to the fruits resign, such is the sattvic tyaga, I opine. Who neither clings to acts agreeable, nor hates those that are disagreeable. Such a wise renouncer is said to be sattvic and clever, and from all doubt free. since no embodied being can abstain from action or cannot wholly refrain, he is a true renouncer and astute, who of the action renounces the fruit. Threefold the fruits of acts discernible, agreeable, mixed, and disagreeable. To non-renouncers after death are due, but do not to the renouncers accrue. O mighty armed, now learn the causes five, whence diverse actions do their source derive, held in doctrines of Sankhya established, whereby activities are accomplished. The seat of action, which the body is, the agent, and the various senses, and diverse undertakings to contrive, and divine will. These are the causes five. Whatever deeds, or right or wrong, are done by speech and mind and physical action by any man, all these actions derive indeed from these ultimate causes five. Since it is so, whoever misconceives, and the soul as the sole agent perceives, because of the unrefined faculty of intellect and folly, does not see, but whom the ego sense doth not affect, and who is of untrammelled intellect. Though he may slay the whole world, yet still he is not bound, nor does he really kill. Knowledge, the object known, and who perceives, give rise to acts of three varieties. The organs and the act and agency are of action the constituents three. Knowledge, action, and agent are defined as with the attributes of threefold kind. The differential by analysis is spoken of now here in terms like this. Who sees all beings in the one abide, and in the imperishable divide. Perceiving oneness in variety, such perception is sattvic said to be. That knowledge which perceives as separate, each being in their individual state, where a differential outlook is shown, such perception as rajasic is known. But knowledge, which adheres obstinately to some irrational act singularly, which is worthless, meagre, and trivial, as the perception tamasic they call. An act performed as duty does dictate, without attachment, without love or hate, and with all hopes for action's fruit resigned, is declared as action of sattvic kind. But actions performed seeking recompense, of selfish gain, in pride and insolence, and undertaken laboriously, such action is rajasic said to be. The act which from delusion doth commence, without regard for rule or consequence, which is the cause of hurt or injury, such action is tamasic, verily. Without attachment or pride, and endued with fervent zeal and steady fortitude, nor elated with success nor appalled with failure, is the sattvic agent called. Who is eager for action's fruit to gain, always greedy, unclean, who causes pain, who is a slave to woe and happiness, such signs the agent rajasic confess. The unattuned, vulgar, and arrogant, deceitful, rancorous, and indolent, always procrastinating and lazy, such agent is tamasic said to be. Of intellection and tenacity, as are distinguished by the gunas three, in all particulars I shall declare, O winner of wealth, of that from me now hear. The intellect which makes right distinction between what should and what should not be done, indulgence, restraint, fear, and fearlessness, the state of bondage and that of release, O son of Pritha, such is said to be the sattvic intellectual faculty. The intellect which makes wrong distinction between what should and what should not be done, which true virtue and vice cannot detect, O Partha, is Rajasic intellect. The intellect shrouded in the darkness of ignorance takes vice for righteousness, which sees all inverted, incorrectly, is tamasic, O Partha, said to be. Determination steadfastly maintained, the mind, breath, and senses in action trained, in yoga practices firm constancy, O Partha, is sattvic tenacity. But Arjuna, which obstinately clings, desirous of fruit that action brings, where virtue is to selfish ends consigned, is tenacity of rajasic kind. But which to sleep and misery adheres, to delusion, lamentation, and fears, which, O Partha, folly cannot forego, as the tenacity tamasic know. Now, best of Bharats, hear as I confide how in 3 parts happiness doth divide, whereby accustomed to such happiness the soul enjoys cessation of distress. That which at first as bitter poison burns, and after to sweet ambrosia turns, such happiness is sattvic said to be, which grants the soul joy and felicity. That which rises when sense and objects meet, at first appears as ambrosia sweet, but later turns into bitter poison, as rajasic such happiness is known. That which begins and ends in delusion, which generates an utter confusion, to sleep, laziness, and folly confined, such is happiness of tamasic kind. There is no creature on earth among men, nor among gods who dwell in the heaven, who from their natural born quality of tripartite distinction can be free. The Brahmin, martial prince, and the merchant, and Sudras, O ye who the foes torment, are each distinguished by the attributes with which their birth and deeds and nature suits. Calm and restraint, penance and purity, forgiveness, righteousness and sanctity, whom faith and knowledge and wisdom adorn, is with Brahmin qualities nature born. Puissance and courage, firm dexterity, and never from the battle's front to flee, who wields great lordship and gives in largesse, are virtues that the martial prince confess. Ploughing and trade and rearing of the kine do Vaishya's innate qualities define, while faithful adherence to servitude is nature with which Sudras are endued. Thus each upon his own duty intent, man reaches his own perfect fulfillment. How he, when to his duty does adhere, attains perfection, of that from me now hear. From whom all creatures derive their being, who fills the world as all permeating, worship of him as duty by one's deeds, mankind to supreme perfection proceeds. Blessed, though faulty, in duty to conform, than others' duty with skill to perform, who does the way by nature set pursue, no blemish of sin doth to him accrue. Let none his innate duty abandon, though full with many faults, O Kunti's son. Discrepancies all undertakings shroud, as flames are involved in a smoky cloud. Whose intellect as unattached remains, self-subdued, hoping not for worldly gains, who practices disinterested action, attains the state of renunciation. How he in Brahman perfection attains, and by what means his accomplishment gains, of that supreme knowledge now learn from me, which I disclose to you in summary. With intellect purified and refined, attuned in practice with tenacious mind, forsaking sense objects as sound beside all fond passion and hate to lay aside, to dwell secluded in frugality, with body, speech, and mind in harmony, who doth always in yoga meditate, fully surrendered and dispassionate, free from vain pride, power, and arrogance, and free from anger and concupiscence, sans possessiveness, peaceful and sedate, is fit with Brahman to incorporate. And who the state of Brahman thus attains is pacified and free from hopes and pains, who sees all as the same and equally attains supreme devotion unto me. And by such devotion he knows in sooth of what and who I am in very truth. And when realization he thus gains, he enters Brahman and to me attains. And who all their actions do undertake, within me asylum and refuge take, they by my gracious favour are thus blessed, and go to that state of supernal rest. Devoted to that goal with all your mind, all your activities to me resigned, and fix your intellectual faculty in yoga and always think upon me. With your mind fixed on me, with firm intent, you shall, by my grace, cross impediment. However, if through self-conceit you shun my precepts here, you shall be quite undone, since if in self-conceit you now refuse to wage this grand warfare that now ensues, and say, I will not fight, it is not well, it will be vain, for nature shall compel. O son of Kunti, if you wrongly choose and from delusion this action refuse, involuntarily by nature's course you shall be compelled to action by force. The mighty ruler of all creatures dwells in every heart, Arjuna, and compels all beings in the worldly wheel thus bound in delusion to spin around and round. To him repair with firm resolution, with all your heart and soul, O Bharat son, and by his grace supreme you shall attain peace, and the abode eternal will gain. Of mysteries, this is the mystery. This knowledge that I have related to thee, deliberation on this wisdom make, and in what seems the best, firm action take. This secret of all secrets I proclaim, to my supernal word give ear again, because you are my loving friend most true. I declare what would be the best for you. Your mind devote, your love on me bestow, in homage and in worship bowing low. You shall to me attain most certainly, for you are very, very dear to me. Having renounced all duties for my sake, in me alone exclusive refuge take. For I, from all your sins accruing here, shall set you free from bondage. Have no fear. To those who have not pious penance done, to those who are devoid of devotion, to those who are to hearing indisposed, who envy me, this should not be disclosed. Yet those who this supreme secret explain among my fond and dear devoted train, they thereby worship me with love most pure, and come to me, of this you may be sure. Nor, therefore, among all mankind I see one who renders more dear service than he. Hence He is loved by me beyond compare, nor on earth shall there be any as dear. Who reads and makes comprehensive study of this our dialogue attentively, he shall have worshipped me with rites divine of wisdom's sacrifice, so I opine. And who among mankind with faith adhere, without envy, to this when they but hear, they are freed, and to blessed regions repair, where dwell pious votaries free from care. O noble son of Pritha, have you heard? And has your mind been to attention stirred? Has your wilderment, Dhananjaya, gone, derived from ignorance and delusion? Arjuna said, all my deluded notions are effaced, since by you, Achyuta, I have been graced. I am myself, my doubts are gone, I stand in readiness to fulfill your command. Sanjaya said, thus I, O dread king, this dialogue heard, with wonderment and admiration stirred, between mighty Vasudeva and his friend Partha, which makes my hair to stand on end. By Vyasa's grace I heard this secret speech, which doth the great yoga mystery teach, which from the master of yoga outpoured, told by Krishna direct, the Supreme Lord. Again, repeatedly remembering this mighty wondrous dialogue, O king, twixt Keshava and Arjuna, again and again I high ecstasy obtain. Again and again I am struck with awe. At that wondrous form of Hari I saw. I am astonished, O my dread sovereign, and thrilled through and through, over and again. Wherever Krishna, Yoga's Lord, presides, and Pritha's son, who wields the bow, abides, there victory and opulence divine and pure righteousness prevail, I opine. And thus ends chapter 18 of Bhagavad Gita, and thus ends the Bhagavad Gita.